The sky above was a bruised expanse of gray, heavy with the promise of rain that never fell. I stood on the cracked pavement of what used to be downtown, a ghost of a once thriving city, surrounded by skeletal remains of skyscrapers that jutted into the air like broken teeth. My name is Jack, and this is Earth now, a decaying husk, a wasteland where survival was a daily gamble against the elements and the looming shadows of alien ships above. I rummaged through the debris, my fingers sifting through the rubble in search of anything that could sustain me for another day. A rusted can here, a scrap of fabric there. It was a pathetic existence, scavenging through the ruins of a civilization that had once reached for the stars, only to be crushed under the weight of its own hubris. I paused for a moment, allowing myself to remember the warmth of sunlight on my face and the laughter of friends long gone. What would they think of me now? I muttered to myself, shaking my head as if to dislodge the memories. Hey Jack, you find anything good? A voice called out, breaking the heavy silence. It was Sam, one of the few remaining souls who still dared to brave the open streets. He was a wiry guy, his clothes patched together from whatever scraps he could find. His hair was wild, untamed, just like the world around us. I shrugged, holding up a battered can that had seen better days. Just some old beans. Not exactly gourmet. I wiped the dirt from my hands and leaned against a crumbling wall, watching as Sam approached. He looked up, squinting at the ships overhead. Looks like the Vorath are out in full force again. We should head back to the hideout, he said, his voice low, tinged with anxiety. I followed his gaze, my heart racing. The Vorath Empire had been a constant threat, their massive ships darkening the sky like vultures waiting to feast on the carcass of humanity. You think they're looking for us? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Sam shrugged, but the fear in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. Best to play it safe. Let's go. We made our way through the ruins, our steps echoing in the hollow spaces around us. Each sound felt amplified, a reminder of our vulnerability. As we approached our makeshift hideout, an old subway station, we exchanged worried glances. The Vorath were relentless, and every day felt like a countdown to our inevitable end. Once inside, we joined a handful of others, their faces gaunt and weary. I took a seat on an old bench, the metal cold against my skin. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the walls, and the air was thick with despair. Anyone heard from the others? I asked, glancing around. No news is good news, I guess, Sam replied, though I could see the worry etched on his brow. As we sat in silence, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that clung to me. My mind wandered to the Zenthari, the alien civilization that had long since abandoned any hope of cooperation with us. They were advanced, their technology far beyond our comprehension, yet they viewed humanity as a threat, a species to be eradicated. The bitterness of that thought twisted in my gut. Suddenly, the ground shook, and the lights flickered violently. The distant roar of engines filled the air, and a chill ran down my spine. What the hell was that? I stood up, my heart racing. The others scrambled to their feet, panic spreading like wildfire. Jack, we need to get out of here. Sam shouted, his eyes wide with fear. I nodded, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I led the way out of the subway. The world outside was chaos. Explosions lit the sky, and I could hear the distant screams of people scrambling for safety. My instincts kicked in, and I moved through the wreckage, each step a fight against the instinct to turn and run. Look! Sam shouted, pointing to the horizon. I turned just in time to see a Zenthari ship spiraling downwards, flames trailing behind it like a comet. It crashed not far from where we stood, sending debris flying in all directions. Are you insane? We need to go. I yelled, but something inside urged me forward. What was happening? Why was a Zenthari ship here, in the midst of a battle? I couldn't ignore the pull of curiosity, the question gnawing at me. Jack. Sam's voice broke through my thoughts, but I was already moving, drawn toward the burning wreckage. I fought against the crowd, weaving through the chaos until I reached the ship. The hull was splintered, smoke billowing into the air. I crouched low, peering through the jagged opening. Inside, I could barely make out the silhouette of a figure. Hello. I called out, my voice hoarse. Can you hear me? A faint groan answered me, and I felt a surge of determination. I had always been a cowardly dreamer, stuck in my own thoughts while the world burned around me. But now, I couldn't just stand by. I had to act. I slipped through the wreckage, dodging flames and debris until I reached the figure, a woman, her Zenthri features striking even in distress. Her vibrant blue skin shimmered in the dull light, and her eyes, wide with fear, locked onto mine. "Help me!" she gasped, and without thinking I reached out, pulling her from the wreckage. "We need to get you out of here." As I helped her to her feet, I could hear the distant roars of Vorith ships closing in. "This way," I urged her, leading her away from the wreckage. We hadn't gone far when I heard the unmistakable sound of engines approaching. My heart raced, and I scanned the area for any means of escape. There, not far from the crash site, was an old spacecraft. It was a relic from a time long gone, its paint peeling and the hull battered, but it would have to do. "Can you fly this?" I asked, my voice urgent. The Zenthri looked at me, confusion flickering in her eyes. I don't know," she stammered. "Then I'll fly, and you'll help me. Move," I shouted, pushing her toward the ship's entrance. The sounds of battle grew closer, and I felt the weight of desperation settle on my shoulders. I climbed into the cockpit, my fingers trembling as I navigated the controls. "What's your name?" I asked, glancing back at her. "Lyria," she replied, her voice steadying as she joined me. "Lyria, hold on," I said as I pressed the ignition. The engine sputtered to life, and I could feel the vibrations thrumming through my bones. "Let's hope this old piece of junk can fly." With a roar, the ship lifted off the ground, and I piloted it into the open sky, dodging fire and debris as we ascended. I couldn't believe I was actually flying, that I had just rescued a Zenthri queen from certain doom. As we soared higher, I looked over at her, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope igniting deep within me. Maybe, just maybe, I had done something heroic today. Maybe this could change everything. "Hold on," I shouted, preparing for the unknown, ready to face whatever awaited us in the vastness of space. The stars beckoned, a reminder of the dreams I had buried, and as I gripped the controls, I realized that my life was about to change forever. The aftermath of the battle hung thick in the air, the acrid scent of burnt metal and scorched earth mingling with the cool breeze of the Zenthri landscape. I stood before the majestic Queen Lyria, my heart racing, every instinct screaming at me to be cautious. I had just pulled off what felt like an impossible rescue, and yet, as I gazed into her striking emerald eyes, I could sense her hesitance. The distance between us felt vast, both physically and metaphorically. "Why did you help me, human?" she asked, her voice steady, but I could hear an underlying tremor. I swallowed hard, the weight of her gaze pressing down on me. I couldn't just watch. "You were in danger. I had to do something." "You risked your life for someone you barely know," she stated, a hint of incredulity lacing her tone. "Why should I trust you?" "I'm not asking you to trust me," I replied, my voice more confident than I felt. "But I couldn't stand by while you were attacked. You're a queen, and I couldn't let you fall into their hands." Lyria's expression softened for a moment, but it quickly hardened again. "Your actions are noble, but trust is earned, not given freely. You must understand that my people have suffered at the hands of your kind for centuries." I nodded, the reality of our histories crashing down on me like a wave. "I know what humans have done. I know we've made mistakes. But this is a chance for something different, something better." "Better?" she echoed, her eyes narrowing. "You come from a dying world, Jack. What do you know of better?" Her words stung, but they were true. Earth was a shell of its former self, ravaged by wars and neglect. Maybe that's why I'm here. Maybe I want to help us both. I know what it's like to fight for survival. A silence hung between us, thick with unspoken thoughts. I could see her weigh my words, the internal conflict clear on her face. Finally, she sighed, looking away. "You have saved my life today, and for that, I am grateful. But there are greater forces at work here, and your presence complicates matters." "Complicates how?" I pressed, feeling the tension between us shift ever so slightly. "Your rescue has drawn attention," she explained, her voice taking on an edge. "The Vorith Empire will not take this lightly. They will see this as a challenge, a provocation. And my daughters, they will be in danger." I felt a pang of guilt twist in my gut. I didn't think about that. I just acted. "And therein lies the problem," Lyria said, her tone sharp. "You are unpredictable." As she spoke, I couldn't help but admire her strength, her resolve. She was a leader, a warrior at heart. But I could sense the burden she carried, heavy upon her shoulders. It was then that I realized the enormity of what I had stumbled into. This wasn't just about saving a queen, it was about navigating the treacherous waters of Zenthri politics, where every choice could ripple outwards, affecting countless lives. We need to be allies, I said, trying to bridge the chasm between us. I have skills, knowledge. Knowledge of a decayed world, she interrupted, her voice colder now. We have advanced technology, strategies that you cannot begin to understand. Then teach me, I said fervently. Let me help you. I may be human, but I'm not your enemy. I want to fight with you. She studied me for a long moment, and I could see the flicker of contemplation in her eyes. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by determination. You may have saved my life, Jack, but that does not mean I will put my daughters in jeopardy. Your presence is a risk, and I cannot afford any more losses. I felt a twinge of frustration. You don't have to marry me off to protect them. We can come up with a plan together. Marry you off, she repeated, a sudden sharpness in her tone. You misunderstand. I am offering my daughters as a gesture of alliance. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. What do you mean? An alliance between our peoples, she clarified. In marrying your kind to mine, we could forge a bond that would strengthen our defenses against the Vorath. It is an ancient tradition. I blinked, processing the enormity of her offer. You want me to marry one of your daughters? Yes, she confirmed, her voice unwavering. It is a way to unite our worlds, to heal the rift that has existed for centuries. I shook my head, feeling overwhelmed. But I'm just a human. I don't belong in your world, let alone in your family. Your actions have proven otherwise, she replied, crossing her arms. You have shown courage and capability. Perhaps it is time to rethink the boundaries between our races. I opened my mouth to protest, but the weight of her conviction stilled my words. It was clear she had thought this through, and there was a certain logic to her reasoning. I could feel the eyes of the Zenthri court upon us, a mix of intrigue and skepticism swirling around like a storm. Your council will not accept this easily, I said, my mind racing. They'll see me as a threat, not an ally. Then we will show them, Lyria replied, her voice fierce and resolute. But first, we need to prepare. I cannot risk another attack, especially not when my daughter's futures are at stake. As we spoke, I could hear the distant hum of energy weapons being charged and the echo of footsteps approaching. The court was about to reconvene, and the air grew thick with tension. I braced myself for what was to come, knowing that whatever happened next would set the course for our futures. Strich. Back on Earth, my friends gathered around the flickering light of a makeshift fire. The remnants of our old lives felt like distant memories as we sat in the shadows of crumbling buildings. They had always called me a fool for dreaming of a better world, for believing that humanity could rise again from the ashes. Jack's gone too far this time, muttered Mike, shaking his head. Rescuing an alien queen? What was he thinking? He was thinking about hope, Lucy countered, her voice quiet but firm. What if this alliance could lead to something better for us? We've lost so much already. Hope. Mike scoffed. You mean the kind of hope that gets you killed? You really think they'll accept him? He's just a human. Not just a human, Lucy insisted, her eyes shining with passion. He's our human. If he can bridge the gap between us and the Zenthri, maybe it's worth believing in. I could feel their doubts, their fears, echoing through the air like a chilling wind. But beneath that, a flicker of hope ignited, pushing back against despair. Maybe I had been a fool, but perhaps that foolishness was the spark we needed to ignite a fire of change. If Jack can do this, Lucy continued, then we need to rally behind him. We can't let him fight this battle alone. We need to show the Zenthri that humanity is worth saving. The others exchanged glances, uncertainty still lingering, but I could see their resolve beginning to form. They may have doubted me at first, but I believed they would come to see the potential for a new alliance. Let's gather supplies, Mike finally said, a hint of determination creeping into his voice. If Jack's out there fighting for us, we can at least prepare for what's to come. As they began to organize, I felt a swell of pride. My friends were ready to embrace a new future, one that could hold possibilities beyond our wildest dreams. And somewhere out there, I hoped that I was making a difference, that my actions were not in vain. The galaxy was vast, filled with danger and uncertainty. But within that uncertainty lay hope, hope that we could change, hope that we could unite, even against the odds. And I was ready to face whatever came next, not just for me, but for all of us. As I walked through the opulent halls of the Zenthri Palace, the weight of expectation pressed heavily on my shoulders. The shimmering walls, adorned with intricate carvings of celestial battles and heroic victories, felt like they were closing in on me. I was no longer just Jack, the scavenger from a decaying earth. I was a potential consort to a Zenthri queen, and with that title came scrutiny, doubt, and 1,000 unspoken questions. "Are you sure he can be trusted?" A voice hissed from behind a cluster of courtiers, their luminous skin glowing faintly in the palace's ambient light. I couldn't make out who spoke, but the disdain was palpable. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. The council members, with their sharp features and piercing gazes, were like hawks circling a wounded prey. I felt their judgment in every step I took, in every flicker of their eyes. Queen Lyria had placed her faith in me, but the council was not so easily convinced. "His actions were reckless," another voice chimed in, a tall Zenthri with a crown of silver tendrils cascading down his back. "What if this human is simply a pawn in the Voritha's game? A means to an end?" "Enough." Queen Lyria's voice cut through the murmurs like a sword. She stepped forward, her regal presence silencing the crowd. "Jack saved my life. He is not our enemy. This alliance is crucial for the survival of our people." I felt a rush of gratitude toward Lyria, but it was quickly overshadowed by the anxiety swirling within me. Would I ever truly belong here? As I turned to face the council, I forced myself to meet their gaze. "I understand your concerns," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "But I came here to help. I may be human, but I've seen the horrors of war, and I refuse to let that happen again, whether it's on Earth or here." A murmur swept through the court. Some of them shifted uncomfortably, others raised skeptical brows. The Zenthri were proud, their civilization a tapestry of advanced technology and ancient traditions. I was an alien among them, a mere human, but I was determined to prove my worth. "Your words are brave, but words alone will not secure our future," the silver-haired counselor retorted, crossing his arms. "What will you do when the Vorith come for you? Will you flee back to your dying planet?" "Enough." Lyria interjected again, her voice firm. "We cannot afford to turn against one another. Jack is a symbol of hope, and we must unite, not divide." Just as I thought the tension might ease, I felt a presence behind me. I turned to see Lyria's daughters, Ilara and Mira, approaching with expressions that were as different as night and day. Ilara, with her fiery red hair and fierce gaze, exuded confidence. Mira, on the other hand, was more reserved, her dark, flowing locks framing a contemplative face. "Jack," Ilara spoke first, her voice bright with curiosity. "What do you think of our customs? Do you find them strange?" I hesitated, unsure of how to answer. "They're different. But I think there's beauty in your traditions." Mira stepped closer, her expression more serious. "You must understand that marrying one of us is not just a personal matter. It is a political alliance, and there are many expectations that come with it. Are you prepared for that?" "Expectations?" I echoed, my stomach twisting at the thought. "I've only just arrived. I hardly know what's expected of me." Ilara laughed, a sound like tinkling bells. "Welcome to the family, then. It's a wild ride. But don't worry, we'll help you navigate it. Just be yourself. That's all we ask." Myra's gaze softened, but there was a flicker of something else, an ambition perhaps? "It's not just about being yourself, Jack. It's about being the person who can lead us forward. A human ruler could change everything for us. But you must choose wisely." "I appreciate your offer of guidance," I said, trying to mask my uncertainty. "But I'm not sure I'm the right person for this. I've never been a leader." "Perhaps it's time you learned," Ilara said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "We could use a little more human unpredictability in our lives." I chuckled at that, but deep down, the weight of their expectations hung heavy. I had a chance to forge a new alliance, to bridge the gap between our worlds, but did I have what it took to lead? As we continued our conversation, I felt a shadow lurking at the edge of my vision. I glanced around, but the hall was filled with courtiers and guards, all engrossed in their own discussions. Yet something felt off, a tension that seemed to coil in the air, as if we were being watched. Jick. Myra's voice pulled me back to the moment, her brow furrowed with concern. Are you all right? Yeah, I hesitated, shaking off the unease. I thought I saw something. But it's probably just my imagination. They're desperate, I countered. They want hope. They want a reason to believe they can fight back. If we present ourselves as a united front, it could inspire them. They need to see that we are not just two races bound by marriage, but a formidable alliance against a common enemy. The chamber was silent, the gravity of my words hanging in the air. Lyria's gaze never wavered from mine, her trust in me palpable. A flicker of determination sparked in her eyes, and I knew I had to keep pushing. Lyria, you can be the beacon of hope for your people, and I can rally the humans. Together, we can show them that this union is not just a formality but a necessity. The prophecy is not just a warning, it's an opportunity. Finally, the advisor broke the silence. And what if we fail? What if this union leads to our destruction? Then we will face that destruction together, I replied, my voice firm. But if we do nothing, we are already doomed. The Vorath won't wait for us to find our footing. They'll strike again. We must act before it's too late. Lyria stepped closer, her expression softening. Jack speaks the truth. I have seen the strength of humanity in him. If we do not act now, we may never have the chance. Trust must be rebuilt, and this is the first step. The council members exchanged hesitant glances, and I could feel the tides beginning to shift. My heart raced with the possibility of success, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing on the precipice of something monumental, something that could go horribly wrong. As discussions continued, a cold wind swept through the chamber, and a figure cloaked in shadows entered. The atmosphere shifted instantaneously, and a hush fell over the room. My instincts screamed that this presence was dangerous. Forgive my intrusion, the figure said, their voice smooth and unsettling. But I believe we have a more immediate concern. All eyes turned toward the newcomer, and I felt a knot form in my stomach. There was something about them that sent shivers down my spine. The figure stepped closer, revealing a face partially obscured by the hood of their cloak. What do you mean? Lyria asked, her voice steady but edged with concern. The Vorath have made their move, the figure continued, their gaze piercing through the room. They are not waiting for you to act. They are already among us. A collective gasp rippled through the council. I felt my heart pound in my chest as I exchanged glances with Lyria. The shadows of betrayal and danger loomed larger than ever. What do you mean? I demanded. How do you know this? The figure's lips twisted into a sly smile. I have my sources, and they are quite reliable. There are those in this very chamber who would rather see the Zenthri fall than unite with humanity. The words hung in the air like a death knell, and I felt a chill creep up my spine. I turned to Lyria, and the fear in her eyes mirrored my own. Who? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. But before the figure could respond, an alarm blared throughout the chamber, filling the air with a deafening sound. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the walls, and panic erupted. Get to safety! Lyria shouted, her voice commanding. We must protect ourselves. In the chaos, I felt a surge of adrenaline. My instincts kicked in, and I grabbed Lyria's arm, pulling her closer to me. We need to move now. Just as we turned to escape, the cloaked figure raised their hands, and a blinding flash erupted in the chamber. I shielded my eyes, but the shockwave knocked me off my feet. When I finally regained my bearings, the figure had vanished, leaving behind a room filled with disarray and fear. I looked around, desperate to locate Lyria among the chaos. Lyria! I shouted, my voice swallowed by the panic. A few moments later, I spotted her, standing near the entrance, her face pale and determined. Jack, we have to get out of here. Now. I rushed to her side, and together we pushed through the crowd of startled council members. The alarm continued to blare, and the urgency of the moment pressed down on us like a heavy weight. Stay close, I urged, my heart racing. We need to find a secure location. As we made our way through the corridors, I couldn't shake the feeling that danger was closer than we realized. The prophecy, the alliance, the fragile peace, it all felt like a house of cards, and the moment we faced the truth, it could all come crashing down. Ilara raised an eyebrow, her playful demeanor fading slightly. It's easy to feel out of place here. The palace can be overwhelming. but if you ever need to talk. Before she could finish, a figure stepped from behind a column, cloaked in the shadows. They wore a dark robe that obscured their features, and an aura of menace clung to them like a shroud. "Who are you?" I demanded, instinctively stepping closer to the princesses, feeling the need to protect them. The figure lingered in the half-light, their voice low and melodic. "I am but an observer, a keeper of secrets. You tread on delicate ground, human. What do you want?" I shot back, my heart pounding. I could feel the tension in the air, a palpable threat that sent shivers down my spine. "Your intentions are noble, but the path you walk is fraught with peril. There are those who would see your alliance fail," the figure warned, their gaze piercing through the darkness. "Enough with the riddles," I retorted, frustration bubbling to the surface. "If you have something to say it outright." The figure paused, seemingly weighing their words. "Beware the council's whispers, Jack. Not all who smile at you wish for your success. The shadows conceal more than you know." Before I could respond, they melted back into the shadows, leaving me standing there, tension crackling in the air. My heart raced as I turned to Ilara and Mira, who looked just as bewildered as I felt. "What was that?" Ilara asked, her earlier light-heartedness evaporating. "Do you think they were a spy?" "I don't know," I admitted, shaking my head. "But I have a feeling we're not out of danger yet." Myra's expression hardened, her resolve shining through. "Then we must be vigilant. If there are threats lurking in the shadows, we cannot afford to be divided." I nodded, the weight of our situation settling over me like a heavy cloak. This alliance was more than a union of two worlds. It was a fragile thread that could unravel at any moment. And as I glanced back at the shadows, I knew that the real battle was just beginning. The air in the Zenthri council chamber was thick with tension, the kind that prickled my skin and made it hard to breathe. I stood at the center, surrounded by the towering luminescent forms of Lyria's advisors, their eyes piercing through me like lasers. Each one seemed to weigh the significance of my presence here, a human in their midst, a symbol of an alliance that had once been unimaginable. "Jack," Lyria began, her voice steady despite the gravity of our situation. "You must understand the weight of what is at stake. The prophecy speaks of a union between our peoples, but it also warns of calamity." She gestured to the grand mural that adorned the chamber's far wall, depicting the ancient Zenthri legends. "If we proceed without caution, we risk everything." I nodded, the implications of her words sinking in. "I know this alliance is delicate, Lyria, but if we don't act now—" "Act?" interrupted a tall, imposing figure clad in the traditional garb of the council. "What do you propose? That we throw ourselves at the Vorath like moths to a flame? This is madness." "Is it madness to protect our future?" I shot back, the frustration bubbling beneath my skin. "You've seen the Voratha's advances. They won't stop. We need to unite, not just in marriage but in strategy. We need to be ready for their next move." The advisor scoffed, brushing his long fingers against the ornate table. "And you think a human can lead us? Your people are remnants of a dying world. You have nothing to offer." Lyria stepped forward, her presence commanding. "Enough. Jack has already shown courage and skill that few of our own possess. We cannot afford to dismiss him simply because he is human." As her words settled in the air, I felt a strange mixture of pride and apprehension. Here I was, an unlikely hero in a galactic saga, but the weight of the Zenthri's fate rested heavily on my shoulders. "Queen Lyria is right," I continued, trying to steady myself. "We must look beyond our prejudices. The prophecy speaks of a savior born of both worlds. If we can harness that power, the Vorath will think twice before challenging us." A murmur spread through the council, and I could see some of them exchanging worried glances. Lyria caught my eye, and I could see the flicker of hope igniting within her. "Let us hear him out," she said, her voice rising above the murmurs. "What do you suggest, Jack?" Taking a deep breath, I gathered my thoughts. "We need to form a coalition, an alliance of not just our militaries, but our peoples. If we can unite the Zenthri and the remnants of humanity, we can create a front that the Vorath cannot ignore." "Coalition?" the advisor sneered. "You think the remnants of humanity will follow a human? They've lost their way." Just as we rounded a corner, a group of guards rushed past us, their expressions grim. My heart sank. If the Vorath were here, if there was indeed a traitor among us, we were running out of time. "Jack, Do you trust me? Lyria asked, her eyes wide with urgency. Of course, I replied, my voice steady despite the chaos around us. What do you need? She took a deep breath, her resolve shining through the fear. If we're going to survive this, we need to work together. We need to find a way to turn the tide before it's too late. I nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle in my chest. Together, we would face whatever darkness awaited us. The fragile alliance we'd begun to forge would be tested in ways we could never have anticipated, and I could only hope we would emerge on the other side stronger than before. As we continued through the palace, I couldn't shake the feeling that the universe was watching, holding its breath for the next move in this dangerous game. The air was thick with tension as Queen Lyria and I dashed through the sprawling corridors of the palace, our footsteps echoing against the polished obsidian floors. The council chamber was a chaotic whirlwind of betrayal, the remnants of trust shattering like glass around us. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, a stark contrast to the cool elegance of the Zenthri architecture that surrounded us. The walls, adorned with intricate carvings of ancient battles and celestial wonders, seemed to loom over us, bearing witness to the impending danger. Jack, we have to get to the transport hangar. Lyria urged, her voice steady despite the chaos. Her regal demeanor was a stark reminder of the weight of her crown, even in times of peril. I caught a glimpse of her face, illuminated by the glowing orbs embedded in the ceiling, and realized how resolute she was. Her presence inspired a fierce determination within me. Right behind you, Your Majesty, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I never imagined I'd be sprinting through an alien palace, racing against assassins. How many of them are there? I don't know, she replied, her gaze darting left and right as we rounded a corner. But we mustn't underestimate them. They are skilled, and they know the palace better than we do. As we raced through the narrow passageways, the sound of footsteps echoed behind us. I could almost hear their taunts, the sneers of our pursuers. The thought of falling into their hands filled me with dread. I had come too far to fail now, not when I was finally starting to understand this world and my place within it. Lyria, can you tell me more about this traitor? I asked, keeping my voice low as we ducked into a side alcove. I pressed my back against the cold wall, trying to catch my breath. How could someone so close to you betray the Zenthri? She took a moment to gather her thoughts, her brow furrowed in concentration. Draxon was once my most trusted advisor. He has served my family for generations, but power can corrupt even the most loyal of souls. I should have seen the signs, but I was blinded by my trust in him. I felt a pang of sympathy for her. Trust was a fragile thing, easily shattered. What do we do now? First, we need to get out of the palace alive. Then we can plan our next move, she replied, her eyes fierce with determination. I will not let Draxon's betrayal tear apart our alliance. We must unite the Zenthri and humans against the Vorath. We resumed our dash, weaving through the labyrinthine halls. I could feel the weight of her words pressing on my shoulders. The stakes were high, and the burden of their future was becoming increasingly heavy. Suddenly, a group of cloaked figures emerged from the shadows, blocking our path. Stop, one of them commanded, his voice sharp and cold. You will not escape this time, Queen Lyria. I instinctively stepped in front of her. Get behind me. I shouted, adrenaline sharpening my instincts. The figures moved swiftly, their intentions clear. There was no time for hesitation. Now! Lyria shouted, pushing past me. We turned and sprinted in the opposite direction, the sound of footsteps pounding behind us, relentless and unforgiving. Think, Jack. We need a way out. Lyria urged, her voice rising above the clamor. I racked my brain for an escape route. My mind raced back to the maps I'd seen during my time in the palace. We were close to the central courtyard, which led to the hangar. Follow me. I yelled, leading the way as we took a sharp left. The courtyard was vast and open, bathed in the soft glow of the twin moons. My heart raced as I spotted the distant silhouette of the transport ships, their sleek designs promising freedom. Over there. I pointed, my heart pounding in my chest. We can reach the ships before they catch up. But just as we made a break for it, a figure emerged from the shadows, blocking our path. It was Draxon, his eyes glinting with malice. You think you can escape so easily, Your Majesty? He sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. You have no idea how deep the roots of betrayal run. I could feel Lyria's tension beside me, her body coiled like a spring ready to snap. "Draxon, you were once a loyal servant," she said, her voice steady despite the threat. "Why betray your own people?" "Loyalty is a luxury for fools," he spat, advancing toward us. "You've shown weakness, and weakness cannot be tolerated. The Vorith will rise, and I will be there to lead them." My instincts kicked in, and I stepped forward, fists clenched. "You won't get away with this, Draxon. We'll stop you." He laughed, a cruel sound that echoed off the stone walls. "You think a mere human can challenge me? You've underestimated the power of the Zenthari, and now you'll pay the price." Before he could take another step, I lunged at him, fueled by a mix of fear and anger. But Lyria was quicker. With a burst of energy, she conjured a pulse of energy that surged toward Draxon, knocking him off balance. He stumbled back, momentarily dazed. "Go, Jack. Now," she commanded, urgency flooding her voice. I didn't need to be told twice. I grabbed her hand, and we dashed toward the courtyard, adrenaline propelling us forward. We burst through the archway and into the open air, the vastness of the night sky stretching above us. The transport ships loomed closer, their engines humming with life. But we weren't out of danger yet. I could hear Draxon's footsteps behind us, the sound growing louder as he regained his footing. "Quickly," I urged, spotting a sleek ship at the edge of the hangar. "That one." We sprinted toward it, my heart racing as I glanced back to see Draxon emerging from the shadows, fury etched across his face. "You won't escape," he shouted, his voice echoing in the stillness of the night. Lyria and I reached the ship, and I fumbled with the controls, my fingers trembling. Come on," I muttered, desperately trying to remember how to operate the Zenthari technology. The ship's systems flickered to life, a soft hum vibrating through the cockpit. "Jack, hurry," Lyria urged, glancing over her shoulder. I could see the determination in her eyes, a blend of fear and fierce resolve. With a final push, the ship roared to life. "Got it. Buckle up," I shouted, and we both strapped ourselves in just as Draxon lunged for the ship. I pressed the throttle, and we shot into the night sky, leaving the palace and the chaos behind us. As we ascended, I glanced out the viewport, watching the palace shrink beneath us, a symbol of the turmoil we were leaving behind. But I knew this was only the beginning. The stakes had been raised, and the battle for the future of both our peoples was far from over. "Jack," Lyria said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We have to unite the humans and Zenthari against the Vorith. They will come for us, and we need to be ready." I nodded, determination settling in my chest. "We'll find a way," I promised, my mind racing with ideas. The fragile peace we had forged was at risk, and it was up to us to protect it. Together, we would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The cold, metallic walls of the Zenthari battle cruiser hummed with energy, a stark contrast to the tension that gripped my heart. I stood on the bridge, the vastness of space stretching out before me like an endless abyss. The Vorith fleet loomed in the distance, their ships glistening ominously against the backdrop of stars. My hands trembled slightly as I tightened my grip on the controls, the weight of leadership pressing heavily upon my shoulders. I had always been a scavenger on a dying Earth, a mere survivor, yet here I was, leading an interstellar alliance into battle. "Jick." Lyria's voice broke through my thoughts like a bolt of lightning. She stood beside me, regal and resolute, her piercing violet eyes scanning the enemy formations. "We must coordinate our attack strategy. The Vorith won't wait for us to gather our forces." I nodded, swallowing hard. "Right. We have to hit them hard and fast. If we can take out their command ship, we might break their morale." Elara and Mira, Lyria's daughters, both stood at their stations, their expressions a blend of determination and fear. I caught a glimpse of Elara adjusting her tactical visor, her brow furrowed in concentration. Mira, on the other hand, exuded a quiet strength, her gaze unwavering. The weight of their expectations was palpable, and I felt a surge of responsibility. I was not just fighting for myself anymore, I was fighting for them, for our future, and for a fragile alliance that could change everything. "Jack, the Vorith are launching their fighters," Mira shouted, her voice steady despite the imminent danger. "We need to engage now." "Let's do this," I replied, a fire igniting within me. I punched a command into the console, and the cruiser surged forward, breaking the silence of space with a rush of adrenaline. The Zenthri ships followed suit, a dazzling array of colors and technology, their sleek forms cutting through the void. As we closed the distance, the Vorath fighters swarmed toward us like angry hornets. My heart raced as I maneuvered the ship, feeling the familiar thrill of piloting a craft in battle. "I'll take the lead," I shouted over the cacophony of alarms and the roar of engines. "Jack, be careful," Lyria warned, her voice tinged with concern. Ignoring the warning, I dove into the fray, my instincts guiding me as I weaved through enemy fire. The ship jolted as a blast grazed our shield, but I pushed forward, locking onto the nearest Vorath fighter. "Firing now," I called out, squeezing the trigger. The ship erupted in a brilliant explosion, sending debris scattering into the void. "Nice shot," Ilara cheered, her voice carrying through the chaos. I could feel the adrenaline surging through me, fueling my resolve. This was not just a battle, it was a fight for our very existence, and I was determined to make every moment count. The Vorath fleet retaliated with ferocity, but our combined forces were relentless. I glanced at Lyria, who was barking orders with a fierce intensity. "Maintain formation. Protect the flanks." She was a warrior queen, her presence commanding respect and loyalty from her crew. I could see the determination in her eyes, a reflection of the hope we were building together. Suddenly, an alarm blared, cutting through the noise. "Jack, watch out." Myra's voice pierced my concentration just as a Vorath ship appeared on my tail. I swerved instinctively, narrowly avoiding a collision as their blasters fired, illuminating the darkness. Got to shake them off. I gritted my teeth, executing a sharp turn that sent us spiraling away from danger. The ship rocked violently, but I held on, feeling the pulse of the engines beneath me. "We need to get to their command ship. That's our key to victory." As we approached the massive Vorath command vessel, I could see the chaos unfolding on its surface, Zenthri ships engaging in fierce dogfights with Vorath fighters. The sheer scale of the battle sent a shiver down my spine. This was it. We had to take the fight to them. Now or never, I declared, leading the charge toward the command ship. As we closed the distance, the ship's defenses locked onto us, and I felt the heat of the blasters firing. "Brace for impact," I shouted, but the energy surged through me, drowning out fear. Just as we were about to be engulfed in enemy fire, a brilliant flash erupted from behind us. A massive Zenthri vessel emerged, its weapon systems firing in perfect harmony. "What the?" I gasped, caught off guard. "Ancient warriors," Lyria shouted, her eyes widening in recognition. "They've come to aid us." From the shadows of the Zenthri fleet emerged a figure, a warrior clad in shimmering armor, unlike anything I had ever seen. The warrior glided through the battlefield with an elegance that seemed almost otherworldly, their presence commanding the attention of allies and enemies alike. My heart raced as I realized they were turning the tide of the battle. "Who is that?" I asked, awestruck. "An ancient guardian," Lyria replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "One who has awaited the right moment to reveal themselves. They are tied to the prophecy." The warrior moved with a grace that seemed to defy the chaos around us, striking down Vorath ships with ease. I felt a strange connection to them, a resonance that echoed deep within me. There was something familiar about their presence, something that tugged at the edges of my memory. "Jack, focus," Ilara snapped, breaking me from my trance. "We need to capitalize on this. Let's push forward." With renewed determination, I guided our ship alongside the Guardian, our weapons firing in unison. The Vorath forces began to falter, confusion spreading among their ranks. "We can do this," I shouted, rallying my allies. "For humanity and Zenthri." As we pressed the attack, the Guardian turned to me, their voice booming across the comms. "You are not merely human, Jack. Your lineage is more profound than you know." "What do you mean?" I replied, my heart racing with confusion. "What are you talking about?" "Your blood carries the essence of both our peoples," the Guardian declared. "You are part Zenthri, born of a union that transcends time. You fulfill the prophecy that binds our fates together." The revelation struck me like a comet, leaving me reeling. I was part of something much larger than myself, a destined link between two civilizations. "No, it can't be. I'm just a scavenger from Earth. Your courage and heart have brought us to this moment," the Guardian continued, unyielding. Embrace your destiny, Jack. Together, we can reshape the galaxy. As the battle raged on, I felt the weight of my identity shifting. I was not just a survivor, I was a bridge between worlds, a symbol of hope. I glanced at Lyria, who met my gaze with both pride and understanding. In that moment, I realized that our alliance was not just a political maneuver, it was a bond forged through shared struggles and dreams. With the Guardian leading the charge, we surged forward, the tide of battle shifting in our favor. The Vorath forces began to retreat, their unity fracturing under the weight of our combined strength. The stars twinkled above us, bearing witness to our struggle, and for the first time, I felt a sense of belonging, a purpose that anchored me in the vastness of the universe. When the last Vorath ship was vanquished, a collective cheer erupted from our forces, echoing through the void. We had done it. Against all odds, we had forged an alliance, a testament to the strength that lay in our differences. Turning to Lyria, I saw the awe in her eyes, a reflection of the hope we had ignited together. We did it, I breathed, my voice filled with disbelief. We actually did it. Yes, Jack, she replied, her voice steady and warm. Together, we have forged a new destiny. As the remnants of the Vorath fleet fled into the darkness, I felt a profound shift within me. In understanding my heritage, I had unearthed not just my past but a future filled with promise. The universe held its breath, waiting for the next chapter of our intertwined fates to unfold.